News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. England have beaten Senegal 3-0 in their World Cup knockout game in Qatar, booking themselves a place into the quarter-finals. Jordan Henderson scored the first goal in the 38th minute with an assist from Jude Bellingham. Captain Harry Kane made it 2-0 just before half-time. It was his first goal of the tournament, and Bukayo Saka got the third in the 57th minute. The victory means Gareth Southgate's men move into the last 8 and will take on defending champions France on Saturday. Former England manager Sam Allardyce told us France will be tough competition.
Of course, Mbappe particularly is... we have some really outstanding players, but this lad is right up there with the very, very best. So we need to pay special attention to him. And of course, Giroud was the leading goal scorer in France at international level. In the box, we need to take care of him. So defensively, we'll be tested more than ever before. But certainly France will have a lot to worry about with the form of our front play at the moment.
The Transport Secretary says a decision by the RMT union to reject an 8% pay offer is incredibly disappointing and unfair to the public. The Rail Delivery Group had offered the pay rise along with a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies before April 2024. However, the UK's biggest rail workers union said the deal wouldn't protect its members and would lead to unsafe practices. Mark Harper says the RMT should put the offer to its members and call off planned strikes. The head of the police watchdog has been forced to resign over an historical allegation. It's now emerged that Michael Lockwood, who's been Director General of the Independent Office for Police Conduct since 2018, is facing a criminal investigation. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, says she told him to quit or face immediate suspension after learning about the probe. When he announced his resignation on Friday, he said it was for personal reasons. Preparations are well underway for King Charles's coronation, which takes place in just 150 days. The St Edward's crown has now been removed from the Tower of London to be resized. Its relocation was kept secret until it was safely delivered. The ceremony on May the 6th is expected to be much smaller than the late Queen's coronation. Around 2,000 guests are expected instead of 8,000. On TV, online and on DAB Plus radio, this is the People's Channel, GB News. Time now for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm your host, Stephen Allen, and tonight I'm joined by comedians, or as Twitter will be saying pretty soon, so-called comedians Francis Foster and Eddie Brimson. But first, let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We start with The Telegraph. Rail unions refuse to save Christmas. The Eye, energy firms target homes in fuel poverty. The Guardian goes with sicker and poorer. Report reveals Britain's widening health divide. The Times, midlife health checks go digital. The Daily Express, army in training to deal with strike chaos. And the Metro, here we go, just to stress the pun. And the Star, The Hangover Part 2. Monster Monday as 3 Lions roar into World Cup quarter-final. And those are your front pages. Let's make some sense of this then. We kick off with the front page of the Metro. Francis, talk us through the big story.
So the big story is obviously England's 3-0 win against Senegal. It was a really good performance. The first 35 minutes were a bit dodgy. It looked like the Senegalese might actually score a goal. Pickford saved us. And the Metro, like you just said, goes with a rather disgraceful punt of here we go. And a picture of Harry Kane, Saka, Jordan Henderson, and, for me, man of the match, Jude Bellingham.
As someone who doesn't know anything about football, I will avoid it by going, Eddie, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's a great result. I thought it was a tricky tie, actually. I thought we were going to slip up. But they dominated it, really. The first 35 minutes were a bit dodgy. But, yeah, so bring on the French on Friday, Saturday night now.
And that's why they said, here we go.
Of course
yes.
it is. Yes, of course. Tough game.
As someone who doesn't really care too much about football...
Why not? What's wrong with you?
I don't know, genetic probably.
Right, OK.
Or the problem. I am from Mansfield, so, you know, who would?
Yeah.
But it means that this time, me not watching the World Cup is seen as some sort of political boycott, a protest. Whereas when I don't watch it normally, people think there's something wrong with me. When I don't watch the Women's World Cup, I'm a bad guy. It's same act all the way through, isn't it? But that's the question. Do you think we can do it?
Yeah, I think we can do it. It's all about they're always going on about Mbappe being the player, but the French looked all right today. But the Poles had a good go at them and had a couple of good chances to score. So we always look like we got goals in us. We're a bit dodgy at the back, but. It's 90 minutes, isn't it?
Are those phrases to do with football? Because we're a bit dodgy at the back. Seems like you've snuck one in.
No, we are a bit dodgy at the back. Would you agree?
We are a bit dodgy at the back. England traditionally tend to be better defensively. We are not. Our strikers and our attackers are the real strength of the team. We'll have to see. I would put France as the favourites, but look, there's always a chance that we can beat them.
They've got a Tottenham goalkeeper, Lloris.
Yeah,
he's dodgy. That's where the chance.
Dodgy at the back. You actually know they should do a spin-off version of this show where we talk about football.
We could do that, can we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do
I
it.
do not have a clue. Let's take a look at the front page of The Guardian now, Eddie. Talk us through the stories on
the headline is Sicker and Poorer. Report reveals Britain's widening health divide and that you're more likely to take time off work if you're in the north of England. That's probably because you can't afford to take days off in the south of England because you've got your mortgage to pay. But, yeah, they're saying that the divide is getting bigger and I think that's something that most of us have known for a long time. The levelling up isn't really working.
Yeah, that kind of disappeared as a thing. It was all very well for a while. People were saying levelling up. Nothing seemed to be either levelled or upped.
No, that is really the problem. It's a phrase and a slogan that has been consistently used again and again. But you're looking around at this country, which is in really dire straits economically, and you're going, where is this magical levelling up? Services are in chaos. There are strikes, energy crisis. People feel poorer. I don't see any levelling or up.
Yeah. No, for a while, it did feel like if we had better infrastructure in the north... I'm from the Midlands, so I kind of get a sense of it, but I know further north there'd be other issues. But the idea that, the Pennine trains, cross-Pennine trains, laughable. The idea that you could have better infrastructure might help felt like it made sense 5 years ago. But now things are so bad... You think, put some extra trains on. Is that really going to help the north?
Well, I used to live in Yorkshire. I used to live in Hebden Bridge and I lived in Halifax. And that line between Manchester and Leeds is an utter disgrace. Obviously, people down south don't see it. I now live in the East Midlands, and it's tough up there. It is tough up there. And I've come down to London today. I've been in London for quite a while, and it's a very different feel down here. And it is a bit like the north's getting left. It's getting left behind.
When I first moved from the Midlands down here and ordered a glass of wine for a lady I was dating, I nearly slapped the barman. What? I said glass, not bottle. £9.50. But anyway, so anything else on the front page in terms of the stories?
So I was going to say, if we're moving on to the Eye now, so with the Eye, it's obviously got top scorers. England face France in the battle for top four, but Again, what we're talking about, the cost of living crisis, energy firms target homes in fuel poverty. And this is a really shocking statistic, Stephen. 500,000 households in this country are so deeply in debt over their energy bills that gas and electricity giants were granted rights to force them onto controversial prepayment meters in the past year. So that's 500,000 people who are struggling to pay their gas and electric bill, facing that choice between heating or eating, and they're being put on these prepayment meters. And here's the real kicker. They're more expensive to buy the gas or electricity. So what you're effectively doing is punishing people for being poor. It's an absolute scandal.
It's almost like loan sharks, really, in a different way. You're making people pay up front and pay more for the service that they already had. It's not good.
It feels like there should be a question about whether that should be allowed, whether you should be... I mean, I can understand if people aren't paying their bills, a prepayment meter, there's an argument there. At least you know you'll get the money because you've got the money. But the fact that it's more expensive, that someone who is so out of cash, they have one of these warrants against them that changes their meter, they pay more to have a hot cup of tea than we do.
Well, it's the same old thing. It's the people at the bottom getting stuffed again, isn't it? Yeah. It's always the way things work.
You know, and you look at, the energy bills and the way they're skyrocketing and the inflation. There are a lot of people in this country who just about make it to the end of the month. They live paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people in this country. And all of a sudden, through no fault of their own, their lives have been made more expensive and they're not going to be able to make it to the end of the month. And we're just punishing them and making their life more difficult. It's a complete scandal.
Well, let's move on to see what the Telegraph is leading with, Eddie. Is this going to cheer us up?
Rail unions refuse to save Christmas is the headline.
That's not going to cheer us up.
No, I love the wording of it. That's the thing that gets to me. It's like everything is the rail unions' fault, but it's crunch time for the unions. I'm one of the people, I'm a big supporter of the unions and the rail strikes. I'm a big supporter of striking. I think it's something slowly but surely Thatcher sort of kicked it all off by destroying the unions. But people have a go at the rail union and say, but the rail union have got a strong union. That's why they're able to be in this bargaining position. So, it's going to be disruptive, but we're really at a crunch time of if you want good services, not just the rail unions, everything else, pay people proper money.
I suppose there would be an argument that people in the public sector who might get if they get the pay rises they are striking for, will have received better pay rises than anyone in the private sector. Is that fair?
Yeah, right, if you go in the rail unions, I caught the train down from Stoke today, extortionate price. Most people were standing up. I just went straight into first class, managed to grab a seat and didn't get charged for it, but, trick of the trade. But if I'm sitting on something that probably weighs 200-300 tonnes and is going at 100 miles an hour, I want the bloke to be getting paid the proper money or the woman who's doing that, because I need someone at the front of it with responsibility who can do that job, and they deserve to be paid for that job.
But, yeah, I know, I take that point, but if you get paid not the amount that you want, you're not going to be more laissez-faire with when you apply the brakes.
No, but this goes back to the levelling up. If you want the right people to do the right jobs, then you have to pay them the right money. And this goes right across the board. It's the way the wording of they're destroying Christmas is in the same sort of wording they're using against the nurses and the teachers. You've just got to start paying people.
Francis, would you pay them the amounts they're after?
Yeah, I would actually, because as a former teacher, it's very, very difficult to do these jobs. And they always frame it as a rail drivers, but actually it's the station staff, it's the people who work at the stations. These people don't earn a lot of money. Like I said before, for a lot of people, it's just about making it to the end of the month. Everything seems to be going up. You need to give people a pay rise, you just do.
I'm hoping there's something more positive in the next section. That's it for the first section. In part two, we've got good old-fashioned British strikes. Zahawi wants to send a message to Putin and the demise of the fashion police. We'll see you in two.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. Clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm still Stephen Allen and I'm still joined by top comedians Francis Foster and Eddie Brinson. And let's crack on. Looking now at the Sun. Eddie, the army could replace ambulances. So if you think ambulance response times are bad now, wait till you're doing it in a tank.
Well, yeah, this is from The Sun. It says the military could be deployed to work on UK borders and drive ambulances during the Christmas strike chaos. Now, this might surprise you because the lights are good in here, but I'm actually old enough to remember when the army were called in last time when it was the fire strikes and they were doing all the fire engines because my dad stuffed a duvet down the back of the gas fire and our house went up and smoke. But yeah, he's again.
Did he do that on purpose because he wanted
no,
to see
he
a
did
green
it.
Was that an insurance scam?
No, he did it because the fire came away from the wall a little bit and there was a crack. So he thought the best way to deal with this behind a gas fire is put the duvet there. He wasn't a clever fella, my old man, but he's no longer here. He went up in smoke. Again, we go back to this thing about all the weight is going on to the unions again. That they're going to have to. It's all the blame is going in the same direction. It's not. We talked about this a minute ago. To me, it's not their fault that they're going to have to. That they're being pulled in to do this stuff. And all we can hope really is that Putin don't really kick off because if they're driving the ambulances over here, God knows what's going to happen if he decides to press the button and we need them to do their proper job.
But at least they get there fast because they could pop the blue light on.
They would, yeah, they would get there fast, yeah.
Break down the hard shoulder. I mean, this is what should happen, though. If an essential service is going on strike, you get the army to fill in.
Well,
standard.
yeah, that's actually pretty much standard. And it all goes back again to pay and conditions. And like you said, you know, having to pay people properly. There's also something that we're not talking about is there is a labour shortage in this country. We are really, really low on people to come and work. And part of the problem is everything is going up. People can't afford to pay gas, pay bills, pay rent. Rent is going up by an astronomical amount, especially if you live in London. What you're being quoted in rent is absolutely eye-watering. So if you're an essential worker and you live in London, I really don't know how you can afford to live if you're a single person.
Also, if you're talking about getting the army in for essential services, I might give the old recruitment firm a shout to see if they can fix my boiler. That's going down as well. If they're going to do everything and anything, but...
Although there is... I saw this story and I did think to myself, like a few days ago we had news stories about the hour-long wait that you have if you're in an ambulance to get in the hospital. Why aren't we using the army now already? Why do we have to wait for a strike if we don't have enough people doing these jobs anyway? We've got a deployable force.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Slightly terrible. If I have a suspected heart attack and the army turn up, I might think, are they here to help? Or
am I hallucinating?
Put you out of misery.
It would result.
Well, it's one way of getting the numbers down on a waiting list, isn't it? But, yeah.
Monday's Telegraph, Francis, and Nadeem Zahawi wants to send a relatively expensive message to Putin. Has he not heard of emails?
No, I don't think he has, and I'm not sure that Putin would actually read an email from Nadeem Zahawi. But anyway, he's told nurses that they need to accept a lower pay rise to send message to Vladimir Putin. Because apparently, if we accept, or if the nurses accept, a lower pay rise, then it will mean that a more stable economy, and that will mean that essentially it will be a sort of two fingers up to Russia to say that we're united as a country, and that that means we will be far more stable economically. Now, obviously, I don't understand what Nadeem Zahawi was smoking or drinking or before he made this statement. I mean, look, it is the position of the Conservative Party that he will go out and he will say, no, we can't give you this pay rise for X, Y, Z reasons. That's his job. Everybody understands that. But this statement is completely ludicrous. Do you think Vladimir Putin cares about the pay rise in the NHS? I mean, he's got a war in Ukraine to fight.
Yeah, busy, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's such a scandalous thing to say, to bring the nurses into this argument. But it's like waterboarding everybody, with drip feeding, and like everything is to do with people. And I know, keep going back on it, but it's the big thing at the moment. It's like drip feeding. It's all everyone else's fault. It's nothing to do with us. It's nothing to do with us. Blame the people going on strike. And it's absolutely scandalous that someone in power can put these two things together.
Yeah, it does come across as a bit of a reach. Like, you'd have to be brainstorming in a meeting for a while until someone says, oh, no, you could link it to Putin.
Yeah.
Like, because the same logic applies that you shouldn't take a pay rise because it would help us keep inflation low and beat Putin. Well, then we should all work for free.
Exactly.
We should all just go out there and that'd help productivity. How about we never sleep, we all work? And if you don't do that, what, do you love Putin?
Yeah, well, I suppose if England get knocked out on Saturday, they'll say that's the reason HS2's been stalled.
Yeah.
So they'll find something, however.
Yeah, take a pay cut and beat China.
They'll write that down if they're watching it. They'll have that. The Independent, Eddie, and to be fair, Suella Braverman is doing the opposite of sending them all home.
Yeah, from The Independent. Lock up all cross-channel asylum seekers indefinitely, tells MP. All asylum seekers using illegal routes will be locked up indefinitely and banned from ever settling in the UK under hardline plans backed by the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Wow. I mean, I don't know. What about locking up our petty criminals and the people who do stuff over here? Although where they're going to put them is, who knows, and who's going to pay for it. But it's just scandalous. Like you say, we've got a shortage over here.
Yeah.
If someone's prepared to get on a dinghy and come over and want to work here, I think they're quite happy to be here. Really.
See, I would push back on that because I believe that you need a strong immigration system, you need accountability, you need to know who's coming into the country, who's coming out of the country. But I will say this to me is another ridiculous scheme by the Conservative Party, who quite frankly have got no idea what they're doing. They can't run anything in this country. This country is in absolute chaos. It's like they come up with a Rwanda plan. I mean, who came up with that? It sounds like it was something Nadeem Zahawi came up with at the same time he came up with that idea. Right, Suella Braverman locked them up indefinitely. No, what you need is an immigration system that works, right? Because the problem is if you just let people cross the channel in dinghies, not only does it put their life at risk, but it also gives money to people smugglers, because they're the people who essentially take people across. So you're funding organised crime. I don't want to hear any nonsense from Conservative politicians. I just want them to hear, we have got this plan in place, we're going to execute this plan, not insane rhetoric about locking people up and throwing away the key.
Yeah, it plays well as a headline, doesn't it? Some certain newspapers, or not the Independent, I imagine, but other newspapers would like this as a headline.
Yeah, they'd love it as a headline, and I totally agree with you on that. I mean, because this is costing a fortune anyway, looking after these people who come over. So, yeah, it just needs to be done properly, because someone somewhere is making some money out of all this. I don't know who it is, but someone's making some money. But the whole system is just totally shambolic at the moment. And yeah, people are putting their lives at risk, but they've got to do something about it, but that certainly is not the answer.
You know, because everybody knows when they listen to her words, they're just empty words. That is literally all they are. It's just hot air. It doesn't mean anything.
I'm surprised nothing happened from a week ago, maybe over a week ago, when she was asked in the Home Select Committee meeting about what are the legal routes to get here, because the rhetoric is always, if you come here illegally, X, Y, Z. But if there are no legal routes, then the concept of an illegal route doesn't make any sense. If there is no way to legally come to England, to the UK, and then to apply for asylum, then, but it just still seems like they're using this phrase.
Yeah, it's they're using this phrase because they don't know what they're doing, in order to use football parlance.
You're back on football again, you're confusing me. Let's move on to the FT, Francis. Good riddance to the fashion police, it would seem.
Exactly. This is a morality police in Iran. What they do is essentially they walk about and essentially monitor women's clothing. And then there was an awful, awful death of the young woman Mahsa Amini in mid-September, which sparked a wave of protests in Iran. And that has actually meant that the Islamic regime, who is in control and is running Iran at the moment, has relaxed the morality police. And it means that women are now able to walk around without the hijab at the moment in Iran, which is a significant victory for women's rights. It is rather wonderful to see, even though it is awful that this woman had to die in order that these women could have a little bit more freedom in their lives.
Do you think this is the end game now? Do you reckon are the cracks starting to show, and if they continue to protest, maybe there could be revolution part 2?
Well, they were talking about all sorts. They were talking about mass beheadings and all sorts a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Crack down on the...
Yeah. So, but again, it's people power. The only people who could change that were Iranian women, and they've shown incredible strength to carry on that protest. And it looks like, thankfully, they've won it.
You know, and look, the credit, like you were saying, it has to go to Iranian women. You know, we talk about bravery in this country. This is brave, brave. This is real bravery. This is real bravery, to stand up against a brutal autocratic regime where the chances are, if you say or do the wrong thing, you could lose your life. But to stand up and say that it's wrong, and the fact that women are doing it, and not just women, there's students and other people involved as well, but that it's a movement led by women, I think is absolutely incredible. So credit to them.
Yeah. And the thing is, what this is about, I mean, it's about having the choice. That's all these women want. They want the choice, whether they wear it or not. And it is incredible. It's an amazing show of bravery from these women. And fair play.
How this story keeps panning out. Let's move on to The Guardian now, Eddie. And Donald Trump wants to get rid of the Constitution, which I believe he's allowed to say due to the First Amendment to some document.
Well, yeah, it's The Guardian. Biden rebukes Trump for saying Constitution should be terminated. The thing is, Trump continues to claim that Biden won key states through electoral fraud. The thing with Trump is he knows the power of social media. If you just throw the message out, there'll be enough people who believe you. And in that, he knows there's power in that. So all of it's kind of pointless, really. He's just drumming up his support as ever.
Yeah. But it didn't seem to pan out that way in the midterms. Everyone was thinking that there would be more of a resurgence of the Trumps. But most of the people that Trump backed didn't do particularly well.
No, they didn't do well.
No, they didn't do well.
But it's about his ego, isn't it? Everything about Trump is about his ego. He'll always have a certain part of the population which is massive supporter of his, and then they can just pretend that he didn't lose, because that's what it's all about, that, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. I mean, if you're not going to accept the result of an election, then there is no point having an election, I suppose. Like, that's the thin end of the wedge, isn't it?
Well, it is. And look, the reality is that Trump might get the nominee for the Republican vote, but the reality is he's never going to win, because January the 6th left an indelible stain on his reputation. The people aren't going to forget what happened. There were awful, terrible scenes that undermined democracy that he was associated with. So to me, he's damaged goods, and he always will be. So all these little tricks, of course.
But if I had footage of you from enough years ago, would you have been saying, "There's no way the guy from The Apprentice is going to win. This is like a joke."
Well, it's like when Reagan came in, isn't it?
You really are older than we.
Yeah, I am. I'm knocking on. Yeah, but yeah. It's madness. But that's American politics, isn't it? It's about show. It's not necessarily about substance.
Yeah, and that is the problem of a presidential system. Yeah. That instead of voting for a party and various policies, it's all about, I like that person for whatever reason.
Well, the reality is as well is that, like I said before, the 4 years of Trump's presidency were so toxic. They were so divisive. My partner is American, and I talk to a lot of her family. I have friends over there. And everybody, even people who supported Trump, were saying to me, Francis, we're just tired. We don't want the constant outrage. We don't want the waking up in the morning and it's like, oh, sweet Lord, what has he done now?
So do you think Trump would have lost the election if it weren't for COVID?
Actually, I don't. I think it would have been much closer. And I think that has actually more to do with Biden being a really weak candidate. I think if they'd actually appointed a strong candidate with strong ideas, with a real personality, with somebody who could have gone out to the Rust Belt and said, look, we're going to work for you. We're going to be a more traditional Democrat Party that's going to work for working class people, they would have had a real chance. Instead, what they've got is a glorified corpse just up there.
But the lies work, and and they did work for him to a certain extent, and it's still working for him again to a certain extent. And unfortunately, it's what's made its way into our politics because we've seen so much of that with Boris.
Yeah.
Yeah. To say something that might not be true, and if someone holds you to account, accuse them of bias because they're holding you to account.
You say the same thing long enough, no matter if it's a lie, enough people will believe it.
I use the same tactics in my relationship. That's part 2 finished. Join us after the break for the racism row in the palace, social justice warriors on Twitter, and the astonishingly inept ministers. Get excited. We'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get right back in with the Metro. And someone's been invited to the palace, and we know which question will not be asked, Francis.
Yes, so Charles has invited Ngozi Fulani to Buckingham Palace after the race row that engulfed the papers and seemingly the media last week. So the King and Queen have invited the charity boss to come back in, and to me, this was a story about absolutely nothing. And I couldn't believe when there's so much happening in this country. There is so many things. There's so many people struggling. There's a war in Ukraine, and we are obsessing about essentially an old woman being not particularly tactful and being a little bit rude and brusque to a black woman, and that was it. That was it, and she was and that's all it was. And we obsessed about it to the point of nausea. It's ridiculous to me.
But I think people obsessed about it because there was actual passion about this story. Like, radio's been full of phone-ins. The phones haven't been quiet.
I think it's quite a big deal, to be fair. And the issue is with the royal family being institutionally racist. And, of course, you've got the stuff with Meghan. I've got my own opinions on Meghan. We might come to that later. But I think it's quite a big story because it's rude, it's disingenuous. There's so much about it. And I think she's right to bring it up, and it does so that there's... I know it's an age thing, people say, they're older people, you've got to give them a bit of leeway, but should know better.
It can't just be about the rudeness, though, because loads of people are rude. Like, everyone I've
this
had
is
in traffic,
this is something ingrained, and I actually think this is quite a big story. There's some other issues around this story that are quite interesting as well, but, I think it's...
Yeah, do you know, there's loads of... The problem with this story, there's loads of nuance on any part of it, but the bit that struck me is if you are saying really implies that you've just not told the truth. If I ask you a question, they ask you the same question with the word really put in.
No, I think there's very heavily laced in where are you really from, and this woman's born here, she's British, and this conversation insinuates that she's not, and that's really disrespectful, and it's offensive.
Let's test it. Francis, where are you from?
Do you want to actually know? Well, my mother's from Venezuela. My dad's from Wigan.
Is that for real?
Yeah, that's for real, mate. That's for real. And for some peculiar reason, I came out looking Jewish. But anyway, there we go. But no, so actually, and my mother's roots are from Venezuela. But everybody in Venezuela is very genetically mixed. So I've got like part South American native and also Arabs from Lebanon and Tripoli. So that's where I'm from.
Did you do an actual 23andMe type test?
No, that's just my family history, mate. Yeah, that is my family.
I'd love that. I'd love that. Lucky you, mate. I'd love a bit of that.
Is that because I'd love, imagine the jokes you could get away with?
I just think I'm sure everyone is that. No, I don't think that's great. We did one of those tests, and it was all around London, except for there was one little dot in Somerset.
Yeah.
Oh, exotic.
Yeah, Somerset.
but
I like cider, so it could be that.
There you go. It's all genetic. But this, to me, is like... like people were always asking my mum like where she was from, because like we get people round to the house, workmen, and like they'd say to mum, well, where are you from? Are you Italian? Are you Spanish? Are you where are you from? And she'd say Venezuela, and because it was the 80s, no one knew Venezuela is, right? They'd be like, is that Africa, right? And I don't see the offence behind it. It's because I look at this woman. She's 83 years old. She's being tactless. She's not being especially polite. I guess the way I was just raised was sometimes older people can be a bit tactless and they can say the wrong thing and they can phrase it in the wrong way, but they're your elders. That's Latin culture, and you should just respect them and go, look, it's fine.
We might do a side debate about whether that's ageist or not, but sadly we don't have time. Let's move on to the next one. The Times, Eddie. And we need more doctors, so what could possibly be stopping us now?
Well, British students locked out of our new medical schools. There's not a lot of fun in this, really, because we do need a lot of doctors, we do need a lot of nurses. And like Brunel University, the first university in the country to launch medical school training overseas students only. The government have backed out of funding British students who want to go into this profession. And it just shows a total lack of understanding and direction. Because the exact thing that we need in this country, that we've undervalued education in our young since I was a kid. I think I was one of the last people at my tech. I went to Watford Tech to get actually a grant to go to university. The second you started making people pay for their own education, that's a massive backward step.
Universities have always done well out of international students.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be at the expense of allowing our own youth to take up those opportunities as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is short-sighted, isn't it? Because the same elsewhere in every newspaper, there'll be a thing saying, well, we need to start training more doctors. Yeah. So why can't they spot the overlap when we can easily see it?
It's short-sighted as the lack of opticians.
There you go. Boom.
Boom.
Boom. Yeah. It's why you
Put
tune in.
Down. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks.
I'm here all week. Try to fish. Try to fish.
But no, look, it's a ridiculous idea. Anybody who came up with this idea, where essentially you're going to lock out British students from a British university, really needs to be hauled up in front of the people running the university, because it's simply not good enough. And they should have known that this would be a story, because it's unfair. It's unfair, it's not right. The reality is universities should prioritise British students. Now, that's not to say that you're going to exclude overseas students. Of course we want overseas students to come here. Of course we want the brightest and best university students to come over and study at our universities. And to be quite honest, they also fund the university. But it can't be at the expense of British students.
So then again, there's another issue, they funding the university.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get into that downward spiral, then this is unfortunately where you end up.
Just for balance, though, I will say you can, if you want to become a doctor, just go online, and there are some online places that give you a degree. I think Dr. Gillian McKeith got one of those.
Yeah.
So maybe go. She doesn't call herself doctor anymore.
Does she not?
The Daily Mail, Francis. And what are the billionaires upset about now?
OK, so this is a story all about Twitter. So Amazon have confirmed they're going to start advertising on Twitter again to the tune of $100 million a year. Elon Musk says Apple's also agreed to pay for promotion at the site again. That's because Amazon pulled their funding, so did Apple, pulled their advertising on Twitter because of Musk's pro-free speech stance on Twitter, whereas before Twitter was very biased. We saw this from the Hunter Biden laptop story, which they suppressed, and then Musk has actually now gone on Twitter and released the story and released the details of the story about how people at Twitter suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story during the US election, essentially effectively meddling in elections and trying to influence the way a US election, possibly the most important election in the world, went.
Do you think there's a difference between meddling in an election and just being a biased company?
No, because Twitter has such a massive influence on... If you look, people always say, yeah, but only 12% of people in the UK or in the US are actually on Twitter. But unfortunately, they are the most influential. They're the tastemakers, they're the journalists, they're the CEOs, they are all on Twitter. So if you were stopping the most powerful and most influential people in society from seeing this story and effectively stopping it from being spread, then you are having an effect.
And Eddie, have you noticed any difference on Twitter since Elon's...
Not really, except for all the people who profess to hate him are always on there having a go, so they're fueling him. But here's the simple thing with Twitter. If you come off it, all these people become unimportant. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
There was a thing where Elon tweeted about the fact that Apple, I think he phrased it, mostly stopped advertising on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it was the split infinitive that bothered me more over that.
Yeah.
Mostly stopped. I mean, stop mostly. If you care about free speech, care about speech first. Get it right?
Yeah.
To the Telegraph, Eddie, and I thought that same-sex marriage debates were over and done with, but they're back.
Clearly not. Disagreeing with same-sex marriage doesn't make you evil, says Rowan Williams, former Archbishop of Canterbury. It makes you a bit stupid, in my opinion. It's funny. I've always had an issue with why, when there's big debates on stuff, we go to the church. Like these learned gentlemen who believe in imaginary friends, and it's like they're meant to be so educated. It's like, but I'm not a religious man in any way, shape, or form.
Would never have guessed, mate.
But it's just like, why do we listen to these people? Surely love is more important than anything else. If people love each other, it doesn't matter how many it manifests itself, surely.
But in this, he's doing a wreath lecture, so I suppose...
Yeah.
You're right, I suppose, why would you ask a former Archbishop to do it? But for whatever reason, that's, you know, a prominent figure doing a wreath lecture. It's an interesting point that in this time of cancel culture, disagreeing should be fine. But what a weird example to pick.
Well, I mean, look, if you are a religious person, if you're a religious Christian, if you're a religious Muslim or Jew, whatever it may be, you're not going to agree with same-sex marriage if you follow your holy book. I mean, that's just the way it is. And the reality is, I don't agree with it, but you should be allowed to say it. You should be allowed to say it. If that is your sincerely held belief, then that is fine.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's not something that you can just impart on everybody else and say and call people evil if they do this. You know, love isn't evil.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as simple as that.
But the wider point without that example, I think, is a good thing to say. That in this time where there's a lot of... I mean, I don't even like using the phrase cancel culture, because then it's a side debate about what that means. But there are some strong ramifications if people disagree with each other. Instead of just being able to sit with the idea that we might not think exactly the same thing on something. If I find someone who disagrees with me, I want to remove them from having a say. We're going through a very controlling time, aren't we?
We're going through a very controlling time, and I really, really despair at that, actually, at the moment we have. Do you remember when, like 10, 15 years ago, you used to go to a wedding and your uncle was there and you used to drink a bit much and you used to say something, everyone would go, oh, ignore him, it's just Uncle Ron, or... Why can we not just allow people to be wrong? Why can't we just allow people to be wrong?
Or to just disagree?
Yeah.
My problem, one of my biggest problems with this is how, and this will throw some petrol on the fire, anyone who is gay and can still go to the church and believe in the practices of the Bible. That just is... I just struggle with that concept to start with. So this, to me,
consider
is...
that to be a concept that those people might be wrong, but you don't try and cancel them?
Yeah.
Or do you?
I don't know. I just struggle with the whole thing. Anyone who's... how anyone can believe in a book that says that how they feel towards someone else is evil... Why would you believe in that? Why would you believe in that?
All the Christians and Muslims and the Jews switching off, mate.
No, but it's just. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying they're not wrong. I mean, when my day comes, all of a sudden the door might open. I go, oh yeah, sorry, you were right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Imagine if you find out at the end of all that it was Scientology you got it.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, don't.
Ending this section with Monday's Daily Mail, Francis. And what is a super embassy, and how do I smoke one?
Right. Okay. That is a great joke. It's all near the city of London, and he says that this would be a ridiculous decision for the government to allow this to happen. So Michael Gove and Sadiq Khan discussing it in the moment. They have a 6-week window in which to decide the verdict. But he's effectively saying, in Duncan Smith, that our relationships with China are not very good at the moment. They are very, very tense. It would be a ridiculous choice to allow the Chinese to build this super embassy. What we should be doing is taking a much harder line against China and saying to them that their behaviour when it comes to things like Taiwan, their aggressive attitude to Taiwan, or their treatment of the Uyghur Muslims within their own country is unacceptable. And actually, we shouldn't be kowtowing to them, and we shouldn't be allowing them to build a £255 million embassy, which, to be fair, in London will probably get you a bedsit.
Well, see, that my question there is, what estate agent sold them that?
Yeah,
you know, that's not a bad deal actually. It's a big old plot.
You'd get you a 2-bed, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe, but it's crazy. It's a crazy idea.
Yeah.
I mean, David Cameron's golden era of relations with China very much over. Like Rishi Sunak's effectively said the same, saying it was naive. It feels like we're getting more sense in our security now.
Well, you think so, but then this pops its head up. I mean, my phone was made in China, and it can tell me what I'm thinking. So, Jesus, what's that going to do in the middle of London, near MI5? God knows what. But, yeah, it's a very, very strange decision.
Right, let's wrap up this part. That's up for this section. Join us for the final section with more Meghan and Harry drama, DJ Rayner giving Mr Hancock a run for his money, and a man who's really let football take over his life. We'll see you in 2.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to the final part of Headliners tonight. Eddie, let's go to the Express. It's got a story about Harry and Meghan. It must be a day with a Y in it.
Well, yes, it must be. They're never out of the news. To the Express, Harry and Meghan's media boss quits just days before Netflix series is due to air. Miss Diani, I hope I pronounced that right. There's no quote from her. I have my opinions on Meghan. Which I'm not sure are going to go down that well.
This is a safe space.
All right. I look at the relationship and I just think it's such a controlling relationship. One by one, people have left their company, Archie Well or whatever it's called, and now it seems they're isolating themselves so much. But you know, I look at Harry. Separated from his family, separated from his mates, moved halfway around the world. From an outsider, just said that's quite a controlling little relationship there. I'm quite looking forward to seeing this because it fascinates me. And they're saying that apparently Prince William and Kate are coming in for some grief. And I mean, there's a few stories flying around about him that we won't go into. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, does this float your boat as well, Francis?
Well, this is what happens, mate, when you punch too far above your level. That's what it means. He's punching too high, mate. He's punching too high. She's too far out of his league. He knows it. It makes him insecure. He's making ridiculous decision after ridiculous decision in a desperate attempt to keep her. He should have gone down a notch, a couple of notches. That's what I'm saying. Gone someone with a bit more in his league. Then he wouldn't be doing these things. I would be doing all of these things and more if I had the chance with Meghan.
So, can we just check with your...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do exactly what he's doing. He's only human. Give him a break.
Are you currently in a relationship?
Yes, I am.
Did you punch up for this relationship, or are you with someone who's exactly on your level?
Wow. Wow. Someone's just opened a can of worms they want to close very quickly.
Yeah, so as a good mate of mine, Jeff Norcott, said to me when I was opening for him on tour, he met my lady, and then on his podcast, when he interviewed me, he said the words, Francis, we're not going to talk about politics, let's talk about how you're punching, mate.
Yeah, well done.
There you go, well done.
You can't see this at home, but these legs are backpedaling.
Let's move to the Telegraph now, Francis. And a female politician was dancing. Who do we think we are? Finland?
Yes, exactly. It's Angela Rayner did a DJ set and she did the classic entrance rave track, and she did it at a charity do by organised by Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester to raise money for rough sleepers, for emergency bed and food over the Christmas period. They raised a total of about £9,000 so far. People are saying that it's a sign that politicians aren't being serious. I don't really understand the hoo-ha. She's just having fun. What's the problem?
Yeah.
She's just having a night out. We all like a night out, don't we?
Of course.
So it's just,
we can see her moves. Now, normally arms in the air like that, that's about 7 pints in, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's normally when I start doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, leaning forward due to instability. It's difficult. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, what's the difference between that and Vince Cable on Strictly?
There is no difference. Good on her. Good on her. She's got...
There is punching up wise. To be honest, I'd rather see that than Vince Cable. She's having a laugh. Why not?
Yeah, that's ageist, mate. Anyway.
It is ageist, yeah. But yeah, OK, fair enough.
Let's move on to the Sun then, Eddie. One school where kids won't be learning about their number ones and their number twos.
Yeah, in the Sun, we're furious as our schools have banned kids from going to the toilet during class. It's appalling. Furious mums hit out at the ruling, saying it deprives students of their human rights. It's not about that, is it? It's about the washing. It's about the washing. As someone who soiled himself in assembly, age 6 mind, right? You know, it's you can't just have kids getting up and down and going out and around about the school all day. You got lessons. Sit through your lessons. It's only an hour. Get from it. But it's a mum of 5 who's really kicking off with this, and that's I'm just going to think, yeah, that's a lot of washing she's going to have to deal with.
Yeah, look, as a former teacher, you cannot have kids getting up and go. I was going to say willy-nilly. That is the wrong thing to say. That is a terrible pun. But you just can't have kids getting up and leaving and going to the toilet whenever they want. It doesn't work within the context of a lesson. You have a chemistry degree. So if you're teaching a chemistry lesson and a kid walks up whilst you're explaining a chemical reaction or how a chemical reaction works, they come back, you've set the main task. They're not going to know what's going on. They're not going to be able to access the task because it turns out that they were outside the classroom for that. So it doesn't work.
I know what you're saying, though, but I will say with chemistry, if you're doing a titration, you know those long burettes where you turn the little tap on and the water trickles out, I dare you to not need the toilet.
Yeah, but you also, in chemistry, you got them little bottles. Just give them one of them.
Yeah.
Give them one of them, put it in your bag, take it out when the bell goes.
Fill that.
Yeah, be like the terraces again, Eddie.
But, I mean, we were talking about 5-year-olds or something. I mean, look, so far my kid's really young and he's 8 months old, nearly 9 months old. He is not very good at not going to the toilet.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he improves. But, I mean, 5 still seems quite young for being able to hold it through a whole lesson.
Well, so that's different. In the case of kindergartens, there's different rules, whatever else. And you've got to remember as well that kindergarten is a fundamentally different way of teaching children. It is nowhere near as structured as teaching 14-year-olds in this
It's not really teaching, is it?
No, it's not, mate.
It's just back and forth from the toilet.
Exactly.
Daily Mail now, Eddie, and fermented food is good for you. It's good news for me.
No, I think that's me, mate.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Fermented food. I've got loads in the fridge.
Yeah, so fermented food is apparently good for you. So what it is very, very good for is gut health, because one of the problems is that our gut health is very, very poor because we eat a lot of processed food, but also when we have things like antibiotics and so on and so forth. But also if you're suffering from stress, because it deprives the gut of blood flow, which means it's not able to properly digest, which then means that you're not gaining nutrients into the body. So what it's really good for is getting some really strong, powerful gut health in there so that you can digest better and live a better life.
Still tastes horrible, though. And,
yeah, it does, mate. I'm trying to sell it. And I'm like, what is it?
Cheer up.
Sauerkraut, no thank you.
Our last story tonight then, Eddie, and The Sun has the news of a man who just needs another hobby, doesn't he?
He does. I'm England's most loyal fan. I've watched 377 games, I've been to 8 World Cups, and it's cost me more than a house. This is a fella called Brian Wright. He follows England all over the world. He's a massive fan. I've followed England abroad a couple of times. His first tournament was 88 in Germany at the Euros. I was at that one. Yes, I am that old. We didn't win one game. So he's quite romantic. It's cost him 2 marriages, but he proposed to his last girlfriend whilst at the snooker championships in Sheffield. So, you know, the fella's got issues, but fair play to him. You know, football sometimes, I think you might not understand this, but girlfriends come and go. Football clubs do not. They're with you for life. If someone said to me tomorrow, well, I've already explained this, but if I was in court and someone said to me, swear on the Bible, I wouldn't mind what I said. If someone said to me, swear on Watford FC, I would be born to say the truth. Right? I'd have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I understand his loyalty.
I don't understand any of you two at all. But thank you very much for that. That's it for this show. Thank you very much to our brilliant guests, Francis Foster and Eddie Brimson, headliners. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 with Simon Evans hosting. Until then, have a good night.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way.
Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence.